December 1944, Luxembourg. Third Army headquarters. An SS officer was brought in for interrogation, captured during the German Ardennes offensive. Arrogant, defiant, he was escorted into Patton's command post, hands cuffed, 2 MPs flanking him, but his bearing was rigid, proud, unbroken. Patton stood behind his desk reviewing intelligence reports. He looked up as the prisoner entered. The SS officer didn't wait to be addressed. He spoke first, in perfect English, looking directly at Patton. He said something that made every American in the room go rigid, a threat delivered calmly, deliberately, inside Patton's own headquarters. Your Third Army is surrounded. The Führer's counter-offensive will crush you within days. Surrender now, General, or your men will die in the snow like the French at Waterloo. The room went silent. Ps reached for their sidearms. Staff officers looked at Patton, waiting for the order to remove the prisoner. Patton didn't move. He just stared at the SS officer, studying him. Then he did something nobody in that room expected. He smiled, not a friendly smile. The kind of smile that meant someone was about to learn a very painful lesson, because this SS officer had just made a fatal mistake. He had threatened George S. Patton inside his own headquarters during the Battle of the Bulge. This is the story of what happened next. Before we get into this confrontation, if you want more untold stories from World War II, hit that subscribe button. The date was December 20th. The Germans had launched their massive Ardennes offensive 4 days earlier. American forces were falling back in confusion. Some units were surrounded. Others were retreating through brutal winter cold. But Patton's Third Army was moving north. He had turned his entire army 90 degrees in less than 48 hours, a maneuver every other Allied general had called impossible, and was now driving hard toward Bastogne to break the German siege. His Luxembourg headquarters was controlled chaos. Maps covered every wall. Officers shouted coordinates. Radio operators relayed orders in real time. The entire building hummed with the intensity of an army fighting on the edge. And into that chaos walked an SS officer who believed he could intimidate George Patton. The prisoner's name was Sturmbannführer Heinrich Vogel, captured the previous night during a skirmish near the German lines. Intelligence had flagged him as potentially valuable. He'd served as adjutant to a senior SS commander and likely carried knowledge of German plans, so they brought him directly to Patton's HQ. Vogel was in his early 30s, angular face, tall, the kind of ideological soldier who'd absorbed Nazi propaganda so completely it had become his skeleton. He wore his SS uniform like armor. Even in captivity, he moved like he was the one giving orders. When the MPs brought him into Patton's office, Vogel scanned the room with unconcealed contempt. He took in the maps, the organized intensity of an American headquarters at war. The room was packed with senior staff. Colonel Oscar Koch, Patton's intelligence chief, was updating situation reports. General Hobart Gay, chief of staff, was coordinating with division commanders. Radio operators relayed orders to units across the front. Every face in that room showed the pressure of the German offensive. Every face except Vogel's. He looked almost amused, like a man watching amateurs perform surgery. Then he delivered his threat. The words cut through the noise of the headquarters like a gunshot. Officers stopped mid-sentence. Radio operators paused. Every head turned toward the SS officer who had just told General Patton to surrender. The audacity was breathtaking. This was Luxembourg, Patton's command centre, the nerve centre of the entire Third Army, and this prisoner had walked in and delivered an ultimatum like he owned the building. Patton let the words hang in the air. The smile never left his face, but his eyes had gone completely cold. He walked around his desk slowly, deliberately. He stopped 3 feet from Vogel. "You speak English well," Patton said. His voice was calm, almost conversational. "I studied at Cambridge before the war," Vogel replied. The pride in it was unmistakable. "Cambridge," Patton said, nodding slowly. "So you're an educated man. You understand history. You understand military strategy," Vogel said. "I understand that your position is hopeless. The Wehrmacht has you surrounded. Your supply lines are cut. Your reinforcements cannot reach you in time. This is the end of the American adventure in Europe." One of Patton's staff officers started to speak. Patton raised a hand. Silence. He turned back to Vogel. Let me tell you something about history. You mentioned Waterloo. Interesting choice. Do you know what actually happened at Waterloo? Vogel's jaw tightened. Napoleon's was defeated. Shh. That's right. Napoleon was defeated. You know why? Because he thought he was invincible. He thought his enemies were weak. He thought threats and intimidation would make men surrender. Patton paused. He was wrong. He began to pace. Slow and deliberate, like a professor who already knew how the lecture ended. Napoleon stood at Waterloo, convinced he'd already won. Just like Hitler stood at the Channel in 1940, convinced he'd already won. Just like your Führer is sitting in his bunker right now, convinced this offensive will win him the war. He stopped pacing and looked straight at Vogel. They were all wrong. You know why? Vogel said nothing. Because they underestimated their enemy. They believed raw military power wins wars and forgot about will, about determination, about the kind of men who don't surrender just because someone tells them to. He stepped closer. Now he was inches from Vogel's face. You just threatened me in my own headquarters, during one of the most critical operations of this war. You told me to surrender or watch my men die. Patton's voice was still quiet, but there was iron in it now. That was a mistake. Vogel tried to hold his composure. It wasn't a threat. It was reality. The Führer, Patton interrupted, is sitting in a bunker moving toy soldiers around a map, pretending he's still winning this war. And you're standing in my headquarters in handcuffs, telling me I'm surrounded. He turned to his intelligence officer. Colonel, what's our current position? Colonel Cox stepped forward with a map. Sir, as of 0600 this morning, 3rd Army units have advanced 42 miles north. We're within 12 miles of Bastogne. 4th Armoured Division is pushing through German resistance. We expect a breakthrough to the 1 of 1st Airborne within 36 hours. Patton turned back to Vogel. Does that sound surrounded to you? Vogel said nothing. Let me explain something about the 3rd Army, Patton continued. We don't surrender, we don't retreat, we attack, always. The Germans think they've encircled us. Good. That means we can strike in any direction we choose. He walked back to his desk and picked up a cigar. Didn't light it, just rolled it slowly between his fingers. You came in here thinking you could make me afraid, thinking I'd hear about the German offensive and lose my nerve. He pointed the cigar directly at Vogel. But you don't understand Americans. Fear doesn't break us. It makes us angry. And when we get angry, we don't flinch. We fight harder. One of the MPs spoke up. Sir, should we remove the prisoner? Not yet. Patton studied Vogel again. This time there was no smile at all. I want him to understand something before he goes. He walked back until he was close again. His voice dropped, not softer but colder. You threatened my men. You stood in my headquarters and told me they'd die in the snow. Let me tell you what's actually going to happen. In 36 hours, my 4th Armoured Division is going to punch through your lines and reach Bastogne. The 101st Airborne will be relieved. Your siege will collapse. And your Führer's grand offensive, the one you walked in here bragging about, will die in this same snow you promised to bury us in. He paused, letting every word land. And you're going to spend the rest of this war in a POW camp, watching, knowing that the moment you stood in this room and threatened me, you were witnessing the beginning of the end for Nazi Germany. Vogel's composure was fracturing now. The arrogance was draining out of him in real time. He was beginning to understand that he hadn't intimidated anyone. He'd walked into a trap of his own making. You're wrong, he said, but the conviction was gone from his voice. Am I? Patton turned to another officer. Major, weather forecast. Clearing tomorrow morning, sir. First clear skies in over a week. Patton turned back to Vogel. You know what that means? It means our Air Force flies again. Thunderbolts and Mustangs hitting your supply columns, your reinforcements, your armour. Everything moving on those roads. He took one final step forward. You came here to intimidate me, to rattle the 3rd Army. So let me be absolutely clear about what I'm going to do. I'm going to break your siege. I'm going to relieve Bastogne. I'm going to push your army back across the Rhine, and there is not a single thing you, the Führer, or the entire Wehrmacht can do to stop it." The room was completely still. Every man in that headquarters was watching. This had stopped being an interrogation. This was Patton making a promise, out loud on the record, in front of his entire staff. Vogel attempted one final stand. "The German army is the finest fighting force in the world. You cannot." "The German army," Patton said flatly, "just got beaten at Normandy, Sicily, North Africa and Italy. It's about to get beaten again right here. You want to know why? Because you're fighting Americans. We don't quit. We don't fold. And we sure as hell don't get rattled by an SS officer standing in our headquarters wearing handcuffs." He nodded to the MPs. "Get him out. Paubelkamp. And make sure he has access to a radio." He paused. "I want him to hear the news when we reach Bastogne." As the MPs moved Vogel toward the door, Patton called after him, "Vogel." The officer stopped. "Turned when you get to the camp. Tell the others what I said. Tell them the Third Army is coming. Tell them we're going to win this war. And tell them that when they tried to intimidate us, all they managed to do was make us angry." Vogel was led away. The room held its silence for a beat. Then one of Patton's staff officers spoke quietly. "Sir, do you really think we'll reach Bastogne in 36 hours? Patton lit his cigar. "We'd better. I just promised we would." He turned back to the maps. The war continued. The offensive continued. There was no time to dwell on an arrogant SS officer who had badly misjudged his audience. But Patton had meant every single word. 33 hours later, December 26, 1944, the 4th Armoured Division broke through the German perimeter and reached Bastogne. 3 hours ahead of schedule, the siege was lifted. The 101st Airborne was relieved. The promise was kept. Word reached Vogel's POW camp that same evening. The American guards made sure every German prisoner heard the broadcast. They wanted the SS officers to understand exactly what had happened. Vogel was in the barracks with other captured SS men when the BBC report came through. The room fell silent as they listened. Bastogne relieved. The German offensive stalling. American armour through the lines. One of the other prisoners turned to him. "Didn't you meet with Patton during your interrogation?" Vogel nodded. "What did he say to you?" Vogel sat with the memory of that office. The cold smile, the quiet voice, the promise delivered like a fact. "He said he would reach Bastogne in 36 hours, Vogel said quietly. "I didn't believe him. He'd done it in 33. The Battle of the Bulge would grind on for another month. But the German offensive, Hitler's last real gamble in the West, had been broken. The Third Army had done precisely what Patton said it would do, and in a Paujou camp somewhere in Luxembourg, Sturmbannführer Heinrich Vogel sat with a radio and the full weight of what he'd witnessed. The man he had tried to intimidate had delivered on every word. The general he'd threatened had kept his promise to the hour. Years later, military historians would study that interrogation and argue over what to call Patton's response. Some said bravado, others said confidence, a few said arrogance, but the men who were standing in that room on December 20th knew exactly what it was. It was George S. Patton refusing to be moved. By the weather, by the odds, by an impossible timeline, or by an SS officer who walked into the wrong headquarters and aimed a threat at the wrong man. Vogel had entered that room believing his uniform and his words carried power. He left understanding that he had just threatened a general who had never once, in his entire life, learned what it felt like to quit. What do you think? Was Patton's response the right call? Or should he have simply dismissed the prisoner without a word? Drop your take in the comments. And if you want more stories like this, the moments inside the war that the textbooks skip over, subscribe, because sometimes the most consequential battles weren't decided by tanks or air power. They were decided by two men in a room, and which one refused to blink? Nobody refused harder than George S. Patton.